All right. Okay, so this will be very interesting for me. We're gonna go straight into the House of Dragons trailer. I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan, even though I haven't read the books. I don't think that should matter with how big the series has gotten. But you are not.
Yeah, I think I've only watched clips and bits of the actual show itself. I think I ended up watching the Red Wedding, like that whole entire scene. Gory as fuck. Very cool. I think I ended up seeing, was it Mountain Man killing?
The mountain when he kills freaking when he kills Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, brutal as fuck. Really, really brutal. And then like some of the awkward sex scenes as far as like I think what was it? I think it was white hair chick and then getting railed by Mountain or something. Daenerys
and fucking
Yeah, it was not pretty. I'm just like, damn, y'all be fucking, and y'all be fucking.
Yeah, that was the extent of my exposure for Game of Thrones, and then also the scene when wow, I can't actually remember his character's name, but Jason Momoa's character when he pours like the melted gold onto Daenerys's brother's head and just melts his face. That was basically all of my exposure to Game of Thrones, and then the 7th season was gonna get released. I saw the trailer, I got super excited, and I saw other people talking about the ending of season 6, Battle of the Bastards, all that stuff, right? So I finally got my interest peaked. You know, I only had Lord of the Rings, and I was like, I need some more fantasy in my life.
Understandable.
I binged like 60 hours worth of TV. I literally watched nothing but Game of Thrones for like a week straight.
Just to catch up for the new season.
Just to catch up for when season 7 aired.
Hey, that's a trooper right there. That's what I call a grade A trooper.
Yeah, so I've got it. They're very prompt points for this trailer, but I've got some stuff for sure.
Because you were mentioning that this was going to be a sequel to the entirety of the story that has already been told so far, right?
Prequel, yeah.
Okay. Because then, so I was also hearing that there's possibly another series that's coming out that's going to be like a prequel to prequel, or like it's kind of starting of the entirety of the world itself. Or is that
potentially?
So it's kind of still up in the air.
So there's like 1 or 2 more spin-off shows for Game of Thrones that haven't officially been really like announced on what they're gonna be about.
Okay.
This was the first one, and this was kind of their big one, because the 3 things that people were asking for were Robert's Rebellion, which is the event that happens when the Targaryens lose the throne, and it leads up basically into Game of Thrones.
Okay.
This story, which is the Targaryen War, which, well, like the screen says, 200 years before like Robert's Rebellion. The Targaryens are the house that owns Westeros, basically. You know, you have dragons, and when you have dragons, you have power.
True.
But at a certain point, and they're gonna tell this story in this series, so I don't want to say too much, but basically, you get different factions within the Targaryen bloodline that want the throne. So this is the Targaryen War, and we're gonna get, you know, some hot dragon on dragon action, as far as I'm guessing.
Understandable. I mean, with my understanding, most of the dragons were wiped out by the end of, or by the start of like the series Game of Thrones, right? And there was only like possibly 1, possibly 2 that were out roaming around.
Yeah. So, if I remember correctly, when they introduced the Targaryens, essentially dragons at that point had gone extinct, partially because of the war, and then I think it also had to do with Robert's Rebellion, but it was mainly due to the war.
Okay.
And then Daenerys, why she became so important was that I believe it was at the end of season 1, she ends up being the mother of dragons, and she lays, you know, 3 eggs. So she got 3 dragons that have spawned from her.
Still a little weird on how that ends up coming up. but I'm assuming
Yeah.
she has some type of some dragon DNA in her.
Yeah, Targaryen bloodline is weird for many reasons, not even just the incest part. But only people that are of like Targaryen blood can actually be a dragon rider, because they're the only people that dragons respond to in that way.
Okay, so as far as it's kind of more or less a generational thing. It's just like your family before were dragon riders, so you will become a dragon rider at this point.
Yeah.
But the only thing is that at this point in time there were no dragons.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, I'm sad they didn't actually do this with him, but Jon Snow, being of Targaryen blood, should have ridden a dragon. That would have been sick, but they never did it.
Oh, what the fuck? How are you gonna like announce that and not show this man like bare butt naked on the back of a dragon?
Bare butt naked. But yeah, super pumped because Targaryen stuff is sick. Like that sword that he was holding right there is like is one of the oldest Valyrian steel swords, which are the ones that kill White Walkers.
So as far as my understanding of White Walkers, they're pretty much like they're wraiths, aren't they? They're like
pretty much. Oh, and this is super cool too, because in the series they only have the Iron Throne, so just this part, right? But in the books, it's the Iron Throne is described as like a throne of swords in a nest of swords. So in the book, the way it's described is that it's literally got swords sticking out of the ground that surround the throne.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, and other people were saying that they're wondering if this is gonna be like a soft retcon, or if like all those swords are only there during the Targaryen reign and they're taken out later. But I love the redesign. That kind of tells me that they are taking whoever's running the show actually is taking a lot of care, which is something that the fans and the franchise really need after season 8.
Yeah, I ended up hearing what ended up happening there. Dude, everyone was bashing on that season. But I understandably, I also ended up hearing that the directors for that last season were also going to be doing something else for Marvel, was it, or something like that?
So the thing that happened was so D&D, the showrunners, had been signed to do a show for Star Wars for Disney. And essentially what came out was that they didn't want to continue Game of Thrones for too long, because, you know, Star Wars, you get the chance to do Star Wars, everybody gets excited, right?
Exactly, yeah.
But they really messed up, because Game of Thrones for fantasy was, and it kind of still is, like the Star Wars of fantasy. Like Lord of the Rings is huge, yeah, but I feel like Game of Thrones is a little bit bigger in terms of popularity, honestly.
Okay. I mean, I can kind of see that, because I mean, around the time that that Game of Thrones was actually getting really big and popular, I think I remember the Hobbit series ended up coming into theaters. So
yeah,
there was a kind of like a 1-in-1 where it was like Tolkien back in theaters, and then not only that, like you had Martin in the small screen. So you had fantasy in both realms, where you're able to kind of see it on the big screen and also like on your everyday TV at home.
Exactly. And like, you know, Game of Thrones was the biggest TV show on the planet when it was airing.
Yeah, and it was all over the fucking place.
And even with the small gripes that people had with 7, mainly due to like pacing issues, because, you know, you're starting to get to the end game stuff, so it's like, you know, the small details of like, you know, taking the extra time to make it feel like these people have taken, you know, a trip across Westeros to go do something. I get it, you know, you can speed that stuff up, and most people aren't gonna be too worried about it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we're getting into literally the biggest moments of the series that have been built up for years. And then season 8 happens, and they completely botched pretty much all of those moments. And it hurts only because most of those things were like things that people wanted or were theorizing about. So it's not that the content in there wasn't what people wanted, it's how it was executed.
Okay.
And when or if you eventually start watching the show, you'll kind of get what I mean. But it's like they wanted a Night King. We wanted the Night King to invade Winterfell. It happened, but it was disappointing.
Yeah.
We wanted it's like we wanted Cersei to die because of, you know, one of her brothers, and that happens, but not the way that anybody wanted.
Dang.
You know, we wanted yeah, it's like we expected Daenerys might turn heel because she really wants to regain power for the Targaryens. So, you know, that ends up happening, but it's rushed.
Okay. So, I mean, it's just more or less at this point, the kind of rush feeling that the last season ends up having, especially for being the last season itself. Like, I think from my understanding as well is just that Martin hadn't finished the last 2 books, right? Or it was it was the last 2 books. So he was still in the process of doing that, but the show itself was, I think, quoted to be what is supposed to happen within the books, right?
Pretty much. So up until season 4, and purists for Game of Thrones will tell you that season 1 through season 4 are the only parts of Game of Thrones you should care about, and some of 5, because that's when like they went through all the book content that was currently out, and it was all under Martin's supervision. Technically the whole show has kind of been,
okay,
but you know, giving notes and stuff like that. And the only reason he gave D&D the rights to do the show, well, he was only gonna let anybody do anything with Game of Thrones if they were able to answer one question correctly from those first few books, and it was what Jon Snow's lineage was gonna be, and they got it right. So they guessed right from all the context clues that Martin put in his books what his lineage was gonna be, and that's the reason he gave him the show. So from all that, it's like, you know, it should be a perfect storm. And up through season 6, it was like the first 6 seasons were kind of perfect. The first 4 are the ones that are undisputably like the perfect ones that everyone loves.
Okay.
5 and 6 is when it starts to veer off a little bit from the books because he hadn't fully written them, but he gave them his notes. Like they knew what was supposed to happen and basically how.
Okay.
But then it's like season 8, and then, you know, Martin hasn't even really started or gotten that far into his book. So all they're working off of is his writer's notes, essentially. Like, these are the big key plot points that have to happen.
Okay.
And then, like, they're supposed to fill in the blanks. Which I get, that's a hard task. But,
well, I mean, that's
everyone...
though. Like, going from, like, having solid material to work off of as far as, like, source material to go for. And then,
right.
At one point where it's a half-finished book, but you already have like the groundwork already laid out for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of work with what you got there. Not only that, with Martin kind of overseeing, like, okay, no, that's fine, okay, that's good with the
right.
has and stuff like that. But then going into unknown territory, or at least at this point, territory that is been, I guess, thought of like scouted out, but not really fully laid out.
Yeah,
I can kind of see where they like can kind of mess up at like on 7 and 8 for being the last couple seasons with almost little to no kind of source content to be working off of, and how
right.
they could like end up having them being rushed, or at least having them come out the way that not a lot of people either expected or were kind of hoping that it was going to end up. So
I totally agree. And like the thing that, at least for me, as somebody that hasn't read the books, but I've watched, you know, way too much stuff in terms of like lore related things for Game of Thrones. Season 7 for all of its like faults and some of the pacing and plotting, it delivered on all the like big moments.
Okay.
So one of the things that people really wanted to see for a long time was the Targaryen and Lannister fight, which was going to be like the Fields of Fire.
Okay.
We got a whole episode dedicated to that, and it was glorious. Complete devastation, and it was super satisfying. And then there's a thing that happens at the very end of the season, a huge cliffhanger that was something that everyone wanted.
Okay.
It was something that people were theorizing was going to happen. It was the only way that like it could make sense for the Night King to be a threat type of thing. And they executed it well. All the big moments they did really well. And then so it's like, going into season 8, they promised a lot of things. So they said it was going to be like 6 or 8 episodes. All of them were going to be 90 minutes.
Dang.
Each episode was supposed to be a movie length. And that came straight from their mouth. Because essentially they wanted to wrap up the story, but also give each major storyline like time to breathe. And obviously 90 minutes should be able to do it, right?
Yeah.
Each episode ended up actually being closer to an hour. And we only got... and we still got only like 6 to 8 episodes.
Dang.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and like that kind of aspect of each episode was supposed to be about an hour and a half long. They end up cutting, what, about 4 to 5 episodes. Yeah.
And what sucks about it is like, everyone knows it wasn't a budget thing. It's the biggest show on the planet, right?
Yeah.
This season literally has more hype than anything could possibly have, except for like maybe, Infinity War and Endgame happening, and then like Star Wars returning when Force Awakens happened. It's literally like a landmark, and that's kind of people's thing where it's like, we get you want to go do Star Wars, but you have your chance to literally cement yourselves as like 2 of the greatest to ever create something in pop culture, basically. And you're right, they totally had that very little to work off of, and I totally get that.
But still,
but
like,
they should have taken their time.
Yeah, they should have taken their time with it, especially like if like you're running one of the biggest shows in the world right now. Like, you have a lot of expectations on you. I mean, granted, the expectations are a lot to fill up with a lot of people, especially with different like varying ideas, varying theories, and from different portions of the fan base themselves. But like you mentioned, if you have something big, you've been creating this for years on end with people's like either gratitude, hate, and anything else you would want to put on top of that. You come off the heels of season 7 being the way it is, where you gave the fans what they wanted for the most part. Although coming off of like notes that probably Martin wrote in like the night before or something like that.
Probably.
Yeah, if you had promised the fans like movie length episodes at this point, and you're still cutting things off to the point where they're barely hitting an hour, like, that's a little sketch. That's a little sketch.
It hurt. Not gonna lie, it made me very apprehensive for how the shows were gonna turn out.
Oh, but the spin-off shows, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
But when this trailer got released like a couple of days ago, I watched it, and it gave me all the same feelings that I got when I was watching Game of Thrones like for the first time. And I feel and those smaller details, like a lot of the shots in the trailer are like key shots that like people that know the lore will freak out about.
Okay.
Like the shot of like the mantle with the dragon skull on it, like that's something. The sword with them just showing the handle, like that's a whole thing. They literally only show a split second of Targaryen like dragon armor, but that's something we haven't seen yet.
Oh really?
Even the little detail with like how the throne looks now, like they're showing that they're recognizing that there's like those details that people care about. And this is a story that is complete, like we know how it turns out. So I don't think there's any way that they are gonna screw this up.
I mean, at this point, I really hope that they don't, because I mean, you have literally okay, you have a little sour taste in the fan base as far as the as far as like the whole season 8 debacle and everything else. So
Yeah.
you have to come in with like your head like screwed on right, and not only that, with that whole entire idea of how you would want to go ahead and lay out the foundation for the spin-off series. Because I mean, at this point, they may be able to go ahead and tread water into different aspects of the lore.
Yeah.
Probably expanded at this point.
Yeah. People are still holding out hope that, and I think the reason why HBO hasn't announced anything is because they want to see how this show does before they get people's hopes up for like other shows. But 90% sure that one of the shows is 100% going to be Robert's Rebellion.
Okay.
I don't personally, I don't see why they wouldn't do that, because that this show kind of directly could feed into Robert's Rebellion, which would then feed into Game of Thrones.
So it'll be a straight pipeline from from that specific war that happened 200 years ago into literally the prequel to the show that is already currently out.
Yeah, and I think that could totally work. Again, another Star Wars parallel, but I think it would totally work, because as expansive as the lore can kind of be for Game of Thrones, those are the two really big things that most people want to see. And I think that'd be the quickest way for them to win back the faith.
I mean, yeah. If you want to give fans more blood and gore and sexy scenes, I mean, by all means.
Oh yeah,
they'll eat it up.
Oh yeah. But big fingers crossed. My love for Game of Thrones has been quenched for the last couple years. You guys haven't seen it on this podcast until now, but yeah, I really fucking love this series, and I hope to God they come back strong.
Bro, without a doubt, I'm pretty sure they're gonna nail these spin-off series if they actually do want to go ahead and make a legacy of Game of Thrones at this point.
Please, God.